All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the July 3rd, 2023 regular meeting of council. And Judy, if you could call us to order, please.
Indeed. Hausch.
I'm here.
Stokes.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
DeVore Leonard.
Here.
McQueen. Here. Thank you. Also present is Village Manager Josue Salmeron, Village Solicitor Amy Blankenship, and Planning and Zoning Administrator Meg Leatherman.
All right. Thank you so much.
Oh, and I'm sorry, we do have also Chief Burge and Public Works Director Johnny Burns by Zoom.
All right, great. Might give Johnny a chance to put on his T-shirt. So I know we have some announcements. Josue, why don't you talk about what's happening tomorrow?
Oh, sure. So, tomorrow's the 4th, so it means we got a parade in fireworks. Weather looks like it's holding up. Air quality is holding up. So that's the things that we needed to make sure that we can move forward. So, but in terms of the activities, festivities, we kick off with a parade at noon, starting at right behind the fire station. And then we'll come down Xenia Avenue. So that's at noon. For those that are participating in the parade, we start gathering as early as 11.
Great.
So,
Great.
And then we have fireworks in the evening that we expect to light up the skies at 10 p.m.
All right. And I know there's a pre-program to that. I appreciate that we are watching the air quality levels, and that is something that will affect our decisions any year related to fireworks, just like rain or anything else. And I wondered, I had heard from a citizen something about that the 4th of July is different for everyone, and Juneteenth being so recently that some of the messages from Juneteenth might be part of the program for July 4th. Did anything ever happen with that, or?
I don't. It's something I will have to speak with Mark Heiss, who's leading the effort on behalf of the Chamber.
Okay.
As you know, the Odd Fellows have transitioned the event over to the Chamber of Commerce, so that's something I can speak with Mark Heiss about.
All right, thanks. Marianne, did you want to mention
yeah.
something?
So at the annual Power Clean Future Ohio meeting, which actually happens several months ago, Yellow Springs got a plaque for its commitment, I will read what it says, for the community's commitment to building Ohio's clean energy future and reducing emissions. And the bottom tagline is, locals lead the way.
Nice.
So that's great. I also wanted to note that I think it was our last council meeting, we signed on a letter requesting that the Ohio Housing Finance Agency stay independent as it is, as well as supporting the funding for affordable housing. And I just noticed, I think it's the OML newsletter that says they have reversed the decision and it will be independent. And I think it's a good example of how when we join together with other communities, sometimes it can be effective,
Yeah.
like this time.
Yeah.
Indeed. Great.
Thanks for highlighting that.
Yeah.
Any other announcements from council members? Okay. A few things. Oh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Some housekeeping items. Tomorrow being 4th of July, that affects our trash pickup. So there's a one-day delay. Trash will not be picked up tomorrow. It's on a one-day pickup. So if you were scheduled to have your trash pick up tomorrow, it'll be picked up one day later, so Wednesday, and all pickup will be done Wednesday through Saturday.
Okay. I wanted to reiterate comments that Josue had in his manager's report about how great Yellow Springs Pride was this year. A lot of collaboration. I think one of the biggest turnouts that we've had for the festival. The parade was awesome. The closing off of Short Street, I think, is brilliant, and continue to utilizing that, especially in the summers, for a variety of things. And made me happy. And I think it made a lot of other people happy too.
It's a great event.
Yeah. Many of you know Dan Pelzel, and who passed not too long ago. His celebration of life was on Sunday. And I wanted to mention Dan because when Mary Ann and I first were on council, we had a lot of people in the audience making comments, asking questions. We still get some of that. But Dan was always someone who was at every public meeting, loved to engage, and I miss that. Also wanted to mention the Senior Center had their garden party on Saturday, and for those of you that weren't able to make it, I encourage you to put it on your calendar next year. It's really cool to engage with our elders around town and learn all the reasons why Yellow Springs is such an amazing place, and always helps give me perspective. We also had our Yellow Springs Development Corporation meeting last Thursday, I think it was, and very productive conversation, some really good takeaways about how Yellow Springs DC is going to be more engaged with our activities and how we're going to collaborate on a more active level. We talked about helping to expand municipal broadband. We talked about a few other areas where we want to get on the same page, and Dino had a follow-up great idea, I thought, which was that a smaller group should organize a slide deck for how we promote Yellow Springs and what we're about and what kind of economic development we want to attract, and then share that more broadly. And so I thought that was excellent, part of that whole theme of being on the same page. And last comment, so I'm looking at the Springs to Freedom flyer that's in the packet that I know Kevin will highlight as well. And I just wanted to highlight that I really appreciate when council and our village team and of course our mayor are invited to these events, because while we can't always make it, they are things that we want to share in the celebration and we want to learn more information. And so I want to encourage, when council members or staff or citizens know about things that we should be at, it's really good, because sometimes we find out after the fact and then it seems like we're not engaged. But remember, while it might seem that we just spend a lot of time up here talking, all of these folks do a ton of work, and we're ultimately responsible for our public properties and amenities, and so we want to make sure that we understand the value of that for citizens. So with that, I'm going to turn to the consent agenda, and we've got two items. First of all, the minutes, from our June 15th council retreat. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And secondly, we have minutes from our last meeting, and that was on June 20th. And again, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And then we've got the review of the agenda. So anything we need to add, modify, or remove?
Yeah,
Mary?
yes. Carmen and I would like to nominate Alex Klug as a returning member to the Environmental Commission.
Excellent. Okay. And so
Under old business or new business?
that will be new business. Anything else? Okay. Then petitions and communications. Kevin Stokes.
All right, great. Thank you. So the clerk has received a letter from the U.S. Department of Transportation to Brian and the rest of us, thanking us for our support to various projects that they're sponsoring. A letter from Leigh Waltz regarding the events poster that Brian alluded to a few moments ago, and a letter from Josue Salmeron, our village manager, announcing an AMP award that our electric utility received. So a short list of communications, but that's what we have at this time. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Yep, the village continues to rock with recognition, and your electrical service benefits for that. Okay, so I think we're going to move into legislation, and before we do that, do we just have the 1 second read? So I'd like to ask for a motion to waive a full reading of the ordinance that we have for our second reading.
I move.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. So Judy, let's go ahead and read ordinance 2023-28 by title only.
All right, this is rezoning 2 parcels totaling .57 acres of property located at 144 Cliff Street to planned unit development and amending the zoning map accordingly and approving the preliminary development plan.
Okay. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right. So is Meg or Josue leading this off?
The PUD, it's Meg, we got Meg.
All right.
Your first introduction at your last council meeting?
Is this 108?
This is 144.
144, second reading.
Okay. I'm sorry, I wasn't prepared to say anything. I'm not sure exactly what I'm supposed to be talking about. Apologize for that.
Sure. Sorry, Meg. So this is the 144 Cliff Street, which is the Bushwick property. The property owners are here. This is to allow more of the business activities that are seen in the downtown business. This area is zone industrial, and the industrial business activities have reduced, and there's plenty of business space that can accommodate new business endeavors that are more in line with what's happening in the downtown area in the village. So previously, we had talked about an expansion of the downtown corridor over to the Millworks and the Bushwick Property Lumber Company. So this second reading before you is to allow some of the business uses that the property owners and tenants have requested to be able to do there, such as there's an athletic space, a gym space, there's a venue for hosting events, poetry reading, open mic sessions, and whatnot. So what's before you would allow for flexibility in the zoning code to allow these businesses to operate in that space.
Great.
Amy, did I miss anything?
And I think we had a really nice conversation about this project at the last meeting. Again, I think I commented on, I love the handwritten letter, so thank you. Yep. And yeah, so since this is the second reading, I'm going to open the public hearing. So first of all right, then I think I'll close the public hearing. I think it's a no-brainer, and I appreciate the development in the area and all the improvements that have been done to facilitate that. So Judy, I think then we can call the roll.
All right, Stokes.
Yes.
McQueen.
Yes.
Brown.
Yes.
DeVore Leonard.
Yes.
Pausch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Could you just speak a little bit closer to the mic?
Oh, really? I'm not speaking loud enough?
Yes, you're
Okay.
not loud enough.
Wow. All right. No problem there. Okay. All right, next up, we've got the first reading of ordinance 2023-27, which we can do by title only.
This is rezoning 1 parcel totaling .666 acres of property located at 108 Cliff Street to planned unit development and amending the zoning map accordingly and approving the preliminary development plan.
All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All right, looks like Meg is up for this one.
Yes, thank you. Sorry about that. I was thinking, because it was a second reading, that you didn't want to hear from me, so I didn't want to try to go off the cuff and not be prepared, so.
No problem.
This way. All right, this is the preliminary PUD application for 108 Cliff Street. The application was submitted by Brian Drew with Macy's Creek Ventures LLC, and the primary purpose for the PUD is to allow for a mix of business and industrial uses within the property. Brian is here tonight, who can speak to this if you would need to hear more from him. It consists of just 1 parcel under the ownership of Macy's Creek Ventures LLC and is approximately .66 acres. It has 175 feet of frontage on Cliff Street and 157 feet of frontage along the Little Miami Scenic Trail. The property was originally owned by PK Lumber Company that operated for several decades and then turned to Herb Lumber. It turned over into several other uses, primarily ending in storage facility, and then the lumber storage structures along the western property line, as well as the accessory structure that face Cliff Street, have been demolished recently. The proposal includes repurposing the existing building into a tenant leased spaces for multiple food vendors and retail spaces, and covering the outdoor area that's near the bike trail for an outdoor year-round patio space. It also would have a public restroom that would be open to the general public. The applicant has requested to have the same underlying zoning as the abutting PUD at Millworks, which includes the underlying zoning of I-1 mixed-use industrial and B2 general business district with several B1 uses as well. And a more detailed list of all the proposed uses was provided to City Council in the packet. On May 9, 2023, the Planning Commission found that the PUD met 4 of the required recognizable benefits. One, a complementary mix of land uses, connectivity of open space, improvements to public streets and other public facilities, and removal of blighted buildings. The Planning Commission unanimously approved a motion to recommend to Council rezoning of 108 Cliff Street to PUD, and the second motion unanimously approved a motion to recommend approval to Council for the preliminary plan. So that's why it's here to you tonight. If Council chooses to approve the preliminary PUD plan tonight, the rezoning will meet the comprehensive plan's land use suggestion for expansion of the downtown business district north to Millworks property, and will allow more flexibility for the property in general. Staff sees this as a viable solution as it will not require spot zoning or rezoning of other residential properties, which is why we're here today. And it'll allow for a good mix of business and industrial uses to allow flexibility for the property owner. So adjacent business owners have been all coordinating with Millworks and the Bushes to share access across their property, and there's already been a connection from the trail to the proposed site for bike path and pedestrian access. If council should vote to approve the application, it will need to come back to City Council for a second reading like the one before, and a final development plan would then have to go to Planning Commission. And I'll stand for any questions.
All right, great. So, any questions for Meg?
Meg, was great, thank you. I was happy to see your first signed report to us, and that was very comprehensive. Like I said, very similar to the previous one, but yeah, checked all the boxes, and everything looks like it's in order, and we appreciate the work that you laid on this.
Sure, thank you. Thanks.
Anything else? All right, thank you, Meg. And since, Brian, you're here, do you want to say anything?
I don't have anything to say unless you guys have questions.
Okay. I mean, to me, I just want to highlight, some of the benefits that I think are embodied in what Meg talked about, like the fact that I believe it means more restrooms downtown.
The restrooms are already contemplated as part of their original proposal, so that
Right.
is in place.
And then the fact that we're taking that area along the bikeway and making it look really nice, tables, places for people to eat.
Bicycle parking.
Right. And so I appreciate that that aspect of the collaboration is happening. It's definitely going to be an asset for the village. All right. So, it is the first reading, but we can go ahead and take a vote. Judy?
Sure. McQueen.
Yes.
DeVore Leonard.
Yes?
Brown.
Yes.
Stokes.
Yes.
Couch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all. And next up, we have the first reading of Ordinance 2023-33, which we can also do by title only.
This is an ordinance amending the village personnel policy.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Josue, Amy?
I'll briefly introduce this. This is in direct response to a request that we had from the Ohio Civil Rights Commission on a pending matter before my time, and this is a way to, it's a housekeeping item to fulfill that recommendation.
Yes, thank you. I don't have a lot to add to that, just that OCRC, the Ohio Civil Rights Commission, had asked for some tweaks to the language. I want to apologize. The original packet that you received had an Exhibit A attached to this ordinance that I managed to lose the tracking on the document when I converted it to the exhibit, so I was trying to make it very streamlined for you, and instead I made it a big muddy mess. So anyway, it's been corrected now. This is available online, the correct version, and you should have the correct version as well. If you have any questions about the language, I'm happy to answer them, but it's pretty straightforward. The OCRC wanted a little clearer language about our anti-discrimination policy, as well as the process of how an employee would go make a complaint and take it through the steps if they have an issue. Any questions?
No, there was an issue with the use of language. I emailed you about it.
So there is some language that actually on, it's, Carmen, do you remember off the top of your head?
Page 9.
It's page 9, yep, exactly. There's some language in section, I think it's 106.
Paragraph 2.
103 that we're going to pull out where, in reference to employees that are asking for an ADA accommodation, it's got all the legal language in there, but then it has something a little cutesier, and it says if you need an accommodation, just ask. We're going to strike that. There's no reason for that to be included in the policy, and I think that's a good recommendation. It won't be a substantive change enough to affect this going from first read to second read, because this is an ordinance. So you'll see in your version after tonight that language will be stricken as well. Thank you, Carmen.
Anything else? Okay, well, we'll have time to discuss this more at the next meeting. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
And we'll move into Resolution 2023-50, and we can do that by title only.
This is approving a grant to Village Artisans Collective in support of Art on the Lawn activities.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so I think at our last meeting, we talked about the request and some of the things that we've seen with the other events, such as helping to set up barricades and some of the other aspects that we facilitate. Any comments that folks want to make on this? I think we know that Art on the Lawn has a long tradition. It helps support our local artisans. It definitely is aligned with the work that we do. And yeah, so if there's nothing, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And lastly, we have Resolution 2023-51. We can also do by title only.
All right, this is approving a lease agreement and rent increase for the 2023 through 2025 for Lawson Place Apartments.
All right, can I get a motion?
Second.
All right, Josue.
Thank you, Brian. This is another administrative housekeeping item. We have talked about in several meetings ago, and I've had conversations with individual council members about the financial performance at Lawson Place and the pro forma. This resolution here memorializes that intent and puts into action an rent escalator of 3% over the next 2 years. Should you vote on this matter today, we'll look to have it go in effect in September. So while the resolution is effective today, we're going to make sure to communicate with all the residents and take over the next 2 months to make sure that they are informed and are prepared for the rate change and the housekeeping language changes to the lease agreement. Now that we have our new solicitor, well, not so new anymore, but Amy has had a chance to review the lease agreement. We're also updating some housekeeping language in it. Any questions on the resolution?
Yeah, I don't have a question about the rent increase, which I would support, but I do have a question about the utilities, which I think is under H. It indicates, as I read it, that the tenants pay all the utilities, but I thought that actually some were included in the...
That's correct. So one of the challenges that Amy and I had in reviewing the lease is that it was a very stock, generic lease that we adopted previously. So some of that language that came over from a template. But for the purposes of the utility payments at Lawson Place, the village pays the water and heating, the water heating and the heating of the building through the common account. So that's paid using the rents from the residents to pay for those utility expenses on behalf of all the tenants. What individual tenants are responsible for is electricity and their individual units. So the only utility under the account will be electricity.
It says that the tenant shall pay all electricity, natural gas, heating, fuel, water, sewer, service, and trash collection, and any other utilities. But the tenant doesn't pay those.
They're paid through the rents collected. Do we need to specify that, Amy, a little bit more?
Yeah, we should.
Okay. So yes, you're correct, Mary Ann. The tenant only pays the electricity. We pay all the other utilities.
I just learned something tonight, so yes, thank you for bringing that up. That will need to be tweaked. And the language in the approving resolution for this makes reference to a lease in a form substantially similar to the attachment because of issues exactly like this. We have not, just simply haven't had a chance yet to go through this with a fine-tooth comb and pull out anything that may not be relevant or accurate.
Okay, great.
So does that mean you're suggesting we just pass it, or we make an amendment, or?
There were, in order to get the notice to the tenants of the increase of the rent increases, we needed council to go ahead and take this action so that we can start taking the steps of notifying the tenants of the upcoming increase to their rent. And then the lease agreement, though you'll be approving it tonight in a form substantially similar, there will be tweaks made to it to reflect what's accurately happening between us and the tenants. But yes, I would still suggest you move forward so that we can get those rent increases in place.
Can you, you're good, Amy. Josue, can you highlight sort of what this increase translates to related to the increases in utility rates?
Yes, as you know, council had previously approved utility rate increases, 3% for electricity and significant increases for water and sewer. So one of the things that we're just looking to cover is some of that escalating costs of utilities. I'm sure other things will change, but we're trying to keep the property below market rate as the intention of council was when we acquired.
And what is market rate?
Market rate starting this year was $833, and our highest rent would be $721. So still below market rate by $100.
Okay. Oh, Jessica?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So is that market rate for a one-bedroom or a two-bedroom?
For one bedroom as defined by Green Metropolitan Housing.
Okay, and then what is the median rate for just Green Metropolitan in general? Or when you're talking market rate, do you mean market rate for Green Met housing or market rate for?
For Yellow Springs.
For not, okay, so for any Yellow Springs apartments?
yes.
Okay, and then what is the median rate for a Green Met unit
For a green, at our property?
in general?
In general, I wouldn't have that information.
Really quickly, it's $833 for a one-bedroom, period.
Period, that's what Green Met.
Yellow Springs, Cedarville,
Okay.
Xenia, it's $833. So if you find a one-bedroom that's Section 8 eligible, or that landlord will take Section 8 for, it's $133. So-
833.
Yeah, 833, sorry. Yeah, it's 833. That's not a Yellow Springs specific thing. That's like if you're on the Section 8 program and you find a one-bedroom, 833.
Lovely, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Carmen.
Any other questions or comments?
I do have a quick question. Do you want this amended so it's September to September, or are we okay with July to July?
September to September works.
You're okay with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that's another thing that we'll update. Gavin?
Just a simple question. Judy, I know you put it in the email to us with the notes, but it said that we can only do 2 years rather than just sort of say, hey, it's going to increase. Is that, I know like when we made utility increases, we did more than 2 years. Like, why can we only do 2 years?
Amy, do you want to, well, the way it was explained to me is that a sitting council cannot set policy for a future council.
So we did on utilities, didn't we?
Far out.
Yeah, so. The reasoning behind that was that then you wouldn't be restricting a future council to something that, I mean, this could change significantly between now and then in terms of the way Lawson Place is managed or how the rent is calculated, and so the thought process was that then it would come back to you or to this council, whoever that may be, in 2 years. The difference between that and the utility rate setting is that's a whole different statutory process, utility rate setting. This is unique. You are unique in what you're doing here with Lawson Place. So that was just my reasoning. It's not a legal prohibition necessarily beyond the general idea that a current council can't legislatively bind a future council. So if you were to say today that for the next 10 years, Lawson Place rent will be this amount every year for the next 10 years, and in 5 years a council wants to say, I want to throw that out and change it, they can, because you can't legislatively bind your future boards. But I just sort of truncated that to the point where we'll just bring it back in a couple of years for you to for this board to reconsider.
So the only reason I bring it up is just there have been these issues where it seems like we don't do the increase after a couple of years, maybe because of politics, maybe because, I don't know. And so if it's allowed, so I'm fine with going forward. I guess I'm just naming for all of us that from my perspective, when there are things that are going to increase in costs, 3% is less than the, consumer price index. It's less than inflation's going to go up that much for sure, almost without question. So just noting that, I just don't, there have been a couple things that we've had to deal with because they didn't get dealt with in the past because somebody.
Well, and that's a great point. And so if this council does want to do something like that, where you just put an automatic increase into place, as long as, if future councils want to take action and change whatever you've done, they would be able to, but that would still take effect year after year, I think.
Well, for whatever it's worth, I would say we should put it into effect and then make the future council stop it if that was allowed, just because I think it's easier to maintain the inertia than it is to do something new. But I don't feel super strongly about this. It's more like all these little things add up over time. So just trying to pay attention to it.
Right, and I would just add, excuse me, Amy, I guess my concern, similar to Gavin's, would be, what is the trigger, at the end of the 2 years? And I think that's the point. Something just sort of expires, but there's no bells and whistles that go off to say, hey, remember 2 years ago, you said you would do this 2 years later. So if we don't have that trigger, there is the concern that it would just fade away and we miss a year or two. I mean, not that that would cause a lot of harm.
It wouldn't. And so what I would suggest, if you decide tonight that you want to do that, go ahead and pass this resolution, and then let us bring back another one that could set the increase on rental rates from that point forward.
I have a question really quickly. I don't know, someone who's rented and who still rents, I mean, you kind of understand as a renter that your rate is going to increase, at least by 3%. Now, I'm not saying that we need to do this way or not, but rents increase. It's a part of the thing. And then regarding like the difference between this and the utility is, explain one of the differences between the utility rate increase versus this.
So utility rate increases are, that's a process that occurs all across Ohio.
Right.
The Ohio Revised Code has language on point about how that process is to be done. What you're doing here is really just us, right? I mean, this is
Well, we're being a landlord.
Yes, exactly. And so there is no legal reason to determine what you can and can't do with future rental rates beyond the fact that my reasoning was a future council might want to weigh in on what the rates are, or what the rental rate is. And so this would allow that to happen. But I hear Gavin's concern that what if 2 years comes and goes and nobody does anything about it, says anything about it, it's not on anyone's mind, then the rent would stay the same. There would be no automatic increase.
Right.
So the only other option we could do is bake something into the lease that we still do need to tweak, that says that the lease will, if they renew, the lease will increase by a certain amount. But you could, depending on what kind of consistency you want between, tenants, then you could have people that are indifferent. That was my thought process. After 2 years, bring it back and reconsider it.
Mm-hmm.
So I just have a question about setting expectations on the flip side. So if I'm a renter and I understand the council's passed a 3% annually into perpetuity, I feel like I can calculate what my rent is going to be 5 years from now. I can set everything out because I know what it's going to be. And then if a future council comes along and says, that's not making it, we need an 8%, I feel like I've been robbed. You said to perpetuity, but now you just changed it. I mean, to me, I would have an expectation as a renter, you said into perpetuity, so I'm going to accept that as...
Right, which is why the 2-year time frame felt like a safe amount of time to think this is, all things being equal to where they are right now, this is what we can expect and guarantee. But then after that, maybe it would be something different, right? Depending on what happens, circumstances could change. So, yeah, I mean, that's... And then Judy, so then you'd be saying 3% or whatever the number would be at a minimum, I suppose, giving us as landlord the ability to increase it further. But again, then it's going to be coming back in front of council, but at least you'll be getting that 3% or whatever you're setting as the threshold amount.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have a bit of a crazy idea, but would it be possible if we were to consider this sort of like rent control, that we say the rent not to exceed X percentage year to year for whatever period of time council would like to consider?
Well, then you run into that issue about legislatively binding a future council.
The same issue.
Perhaps, right? Yes,
Right.
if you have a new council in 5 years that says, we think this rent needs to be this amount, and this council has done something like that to cap it, then it could potentially be an issue. It's unlikely, it's unusual, but it could happen.
Yeah, well, it sounds like for the sake of time tonight and for the notices that need to go out, I think Amy's suggestion is let's pass it virtually as is with whatever, timely amendments are done, and then it's going to come back and we can do a deeper dive and do it with more of the details in.
And so, yeah, and you could set a minimum amount for future years that it will automatically increase to that amount.
And I thought I heard you say we could presumably do that through the lease, right? That could still be like...
And we could do it through the lease.
Substantially similar.
Sure.
So I guess I'm hearing that there's support to do that. I mean, does anyone think that shouldn't be a part of this?
Sorry, support to do what?
To have this automatic escalator, but with the idea that we send a signal that we're trying to rent control, essentially. I mean, so, and then we could see what that lease looks like, presumably.
With the other caveat being that it's my understanding that the rent and loss in place is based on a formula, right? There's a formula done in terms of income and all of that, right? That determines what each tenant's rent is?
No, it's not income-based. It's based on the pro forma that, the finances that we need to operate the building.
Okay.
So the tenants do not pay on their ability to pay or income base.
Wait a minute. How many tenants are on Section 8 roughly? None? You have 3 Section 8 tenants, then it is. I mean, not on their ability to pay, but the numbers that we're getting, really quickly, the numbers that we're getting for that 833 is, that's a Section 8 number. And if there are people on Section 8, Section 8 pays, you pay, if the rent exceeds 30% of your income, Section 8 covers the rest. So,
Which is how the current lease is drafted
Right.
to reflect that.
Right,
So-
but our rental rate is not based on the tenant's ability to pay a specific amount. For the Section 8 tenants, yes, those Section 8 tenants pay what based on...
what they can pay.
And Green Metropolitan Housing pays the difference. But on our pro forma, how we operate the building...
Yeah, I got that part.
Okay.
I'm going to suggest that we not do that. This is the first year, I think we're doing. And we have a lot of factors to consider, I think. Our utilities, repairs on the building, I don't know. So I think we should let this roll out another year or so before we start, if we're going to start automatically increasing the rent, just so that we evaluate it every year.
It did feel new enough to me to warrant revisiting it soonish. 2 years is going to feel pretty soon, right? That'll pop up pretty quickly. Versus setting something a little more long-term.
I don't feel that strongly about it, so, I mean, that's fine. Can I just ask, so what is the thing that happens in 2 years? So, like, how would we know, just because we're watching the rents and that's when we'd bring it up?
The leases also expire, so all current tenants will have leases that expire end of July, end of August.
Yeah.
And so then that triggers us to renew a lease. So once we renew a lease, we have new terms to renew a lease.
Okay, so I was mistaken then. There is a trigger.
There is that trigger, but there are going to be tenants that may leave the unit in the middle of a term, and then that person will be under a lease midway between two changes, if that makes sense.
But the predominant number of leases will expire in 2 years. And that's
Correct. And our hope is
something
that everyone stays and we're on the same
Yeah.
cycle.
So I say, let's keep it simple. Pass it as is. We'll see this again in 2 years. Well, we'll deeply revisit this in 2 years, but we can talk more in a couple of meetings if we need to.
Yep. Okay. Amy, looks like Jessica wants to
Oh, sorry.
bump you off the podium. Hey, Jessica.
I just did
I'm
have
just
one
kidding.
more kind of background question, because I know tenants have changed. How many units are functional right now, or are leased out?
We have 16 units. One is been recently remodeled, and we just leased that one up. So we're back to 16 units being occupied.
Okay, and you said there's 3 tenants that are part of Section 8?
Yes.
And how many tenants were a part of that program when you took over the building?
I believe just one, but I'll have to confirm that number.
Yeah, can you confirm that for me? Thanks.
Thank you.
And I'll say voucher recipients, just to...
Yep. Okay, so one thing I will highlight is, Gavin's point is one that I have experienced over the time that I've been on council, which is that, we've always talked about having this master calendar and, it triggers that, oh yeah, we're supposed to revisit that, but we often do not on a variety of issues. So I think it's a valid point, but I think what I've also heard is that we're ready to kind of vote on, as long as we change September to September and we fix the utilities thing, that we can start there. So, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, citizen concerns. So this is the time on the agenda where we'd love to hear any comments about things that are not actually an agenda item. We ask that you limit those comments to 3 minutes as best as possible. And I can see Mitzi Miller's ready to go.
Thank you. My name is Mitzi Miller. I've been a resident over 30 years in Yellow Springs. I'd like to acknowledge and thank Lacey Fox, the past Channel 5 manager, for her work editing and putting together the program on sidewalk accessibility for pedestrians on Channel 5 and YouTube. If council members haven't watched it, I encourage you to listen to the testimonies of community members and organizations and their support for making Yellow Springs a safe, walkable community for all pedestrians. We need to be focusing on the most dangerous sidewalks needing repair in our community. For example, safe routes to school, the downtown area, the wellness center route, and complaints made by community members. It's time for more commitment and collaboration with one another, and the Yellow Springs Action project for sidewalks. Let's continue to make Yellow Springs safe for all pedestrians and a showcase for other communities. While it takes time to change mindsets, your continued effort to educate property owners and community members can be accomplished in many more ways. For example, notices in the paper about the ordinances, notices sent out maybe with the utility bill. Channel 5 can be used, the village website as well. The village's commitment to having our zoning department investigate complaints and sending notices out in a timely manner and following up is crucial. While we don't have a zoning enforcement department, village staff and all should be encouraged to report safety issues and zoning issues involved in regarding sidewalks. Let's have our maintenance department cut tree limbs overhanging in the downtown area, our parks. I can say Duncan Park, the crosswalk has 3 trees with branches overhanging. The properties between sidewalks and streets where trees have been planted, I'm not sure if that's by the tree committee or the village, and removing grass and debris along streets and sidewalks. Maybe the tree committee can also be involved in this process to help out. Our group and volunteers could assist the zoning department with notifications by calling property owners, personal contact, and placing door hangers on doors as the first step prior to a letter going out and citations being noticed. That's something that I've heard a lot of, that they would like something prior to just getting a surprising letter. We also can assist those individuals needing help our group can, to maintain safe sidewalks. The elderly, people who are disabled, we're more than welcome to do that. Let's make Yellow Springs a showcase for other communities by working together and making Yellow Springs a safe, walkable community. Thank you.
Say, perfect. Kate?
Yeah, Kate Anderson Kerrigan, for those of you who don't know me. I'm here to support the citizen action projects work that's being done in town. And one of the most important parts of that is gaining compliance is education. So we, the CAP, do a lot of educating by talking to citizens, helping them to understand the work that's being done, letting them know why it's important and how it affects everybody, not just, well, we focus a little more to the ADA. As an elder with bad knees, I can tell you, it's really important to not go down the sidewalk and fall down. So I'm suggesting some of the things that came to mind for me that the village could actually do with existing resource. Nothing new that you have to buy or anything, existing resource that could create a lot more education. So flyers in the news, you did this one, this is great. I love this. Do it more often. Do it every month. Do it once a week. Do it all the time. The village website, you could add a direct link to the ordinance. People are always asking, what does the ordinance say? It's difficult to find on your website. It is not easy to find. So put a link on the homepage. Facebook. Who isn't living on Facebook? You have a Facebook page, post. The notice space on utility bills, that's great. That's like that little Jackson Lytle free space in the paper every week. Same thing. Channel 5. Use Channel 5. The Philip Show. Philip's a very creative guy, and I'm sure he could get into, the editorial nature of this and have some fun with it and educate. Create a video or use the one that CAP already made and run it on public access continually. Have the Yellow Springs News run a story at the change of seasons, because this is where we go from scraping grass up to shoveling snow and ice. A simple survey, a simple survey to see what citizens think or where they stand on this issue, because they probably don't even know a lot about this, I'm guessing, from my interaction with people. Partner with other organizations in town to get the message out, other civic organizations in particular, like the Senior Center, McKee Association, Rotary, Eagles, even the Yellow Springs Children's Center. They walk all over town. A town hall type meeting to present what the ordinance says and what the village expectations are. A lot of times people don't know what you want or what you need or what their, the expectation is. So there's a way to put it right in front of them. One more paragraph. And I think people can come up with many other things. What we do know, and I know personally I worked on the first Safe Routes to School project many years ago. I was the education person. The more people know, the more they are likely to comply. Knowledge is power. The more educated the people are, the more understanding we achieve, the more compliance we get. Mind you, it's hard work, but in the end, you get to the goal you want. Isn't that what we want? Yellow Springs has always been about the community stepping up to address the issues, finding a solution, getting the job done in a good way, collaboratively, cooperatively. It's just who we are. And I want to thank Mitzi for her energy and her dedication to this project. She is a shining example to me, a shining example of the Yellow Springs way of doing things. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Jason, were you here to say something?
Yeah.
Coming up.
And I think council did get your email also
At the table, so.
My daughter's with me. This is Suzette. I'm Jason Levesque. This is Suzette Levesque. I live at 545 Fairfield Pike. I've sent a lot of emails to everyone in here recently. I've been told to not let up, so I'm going to continue. So I sent a letter the other day in regard to just safety concerns with Fairfield Pike and just how things worked for a while and then they kind of stop working after a little bit. I don't know how that works. I know there's always a lot of the same people driving down Fairfield Pike, so maybe they see the signs at first and then they kind of forget about them. I don't know. But I do want to at least start a discussion around speed humps. I've been doing a lot of research about them. I've emailed about them. And I think it's a really good solution for any of the trouble streets that are 25 miles per hour that could be experiencing the same thing. As I mentioned, I think I talked to maybe Brian the other day, our neighbors just moved to Corvallis, and they said out there they have the speed humps, and they sent me a study today where I know one of the main things about not putting in speed humps was for emergency crews getting through, but the emergency crews in Corvallis actually requested the speed humps because of how significantly they do to reduce the speed limit. I think it was on average by 10 to 15 miles per hour that they were reducing them. So there's lots of studies out there. I encourage to kind of look into it, and hopefully we can start making some solutions. So she just learned to ride her bike, and there's no sidewalks out there, so I just want her to be safe. So that's all I got.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Suzette. And make sure to wear your helmet, too. Yes.
Is it okay if I comment?
Yes.
I just know in the past we've had conversations about speed bumps, and I think the thing that's been brought up is a concern about the difficulty of having to deal with them when snow removal is going on. And I guess just throw out there, I think it's worth us talking about some more. I was thinking about that this year when we had to do snow removal, I think 2 times, maybe? More than that?
Johnny's online, yeah.
Johnny, how many times do we have to do? Anyway, we don't need to get into all this today. I just think it might be worth talking about some more. It's, as somebody who lives on another 25-mile-an-hour street that people zip down, you wonder when you go to lots of other communities that have speed bumps, so just agreeing with that.
Yeah, I would like to touch on something really quickly, what you just said. So in Corvallis, larger municipality, right? So the reason why the EMTs and the personnel safety people, first responders are probably in favor is because it reduces the likelihood of accidents or somebody getting hit.
Yeah.
So yes, they would be for that. It makes sense. I live right there. So coming out of Fair Acres, I've almost gotten clipped, and people should slow down. And like you said, it was better. It was pretty good for almost a couple months.
Yeah.
And then, the novelty wore off because the Just Saying sign is there.
He moved that and
Yeah, but
25 mile per hour.
right, the 25 mile per hour thing is great, but I'm about the use of language, and of course we don't want to increase interactions, if it's not necessary. But one time I got a speeding ticket. Guess how many speeding tickets I got in my life? 1.
Okay.
So,
Mary, I saw you
Yeah,
wanted to say something.
I would like to request that staff come up with a proposal for Fairfield in particular, but there are some other streets. And it has to be something different than what we have. I mean, we can only have our police officers sitting there so much of the time, the little sign telling people which they don't obey, whatever. I mean, we should be able to do something, and I think we need to be able to do something, whether it's stop signs, bump out, whatever. I request that staff take this on, and the Active Transportation Committee, I think, could help. Chris Bongiorno, I think, might be able to help, but I think we need to have some plan that addresses this and then other places in town.
Okay. And Kate will take a quick comment, but you got to come back to the mic.
Just for those that are listening, Fairfield Road is a county road, so that's a different ballgame, too. And years ago, Dan did a very extensive study on that street, on that road. It's very difficult to deal with the county. they, more than likely, will never, ever do speed bumps. Sorry, because I'm your neighbor. I get it. So a good traffic study gives you boatloads of information, and the thing we found mostly was ticketing. You know, if the cops are riding that road, if the cops are sitting on the road, if they're there consistently. You know, there was a time in Yellow Springs where you wouldn't dare speed in this town. You know, you'd turn a corner too fast, ticket. So there are places in town where I believe we should get back to that, and Fairfield's one of them.
Thank you. I think good discussion. There's some important recommendations in the active transportation plan related to raised crosswalks and speed humps, and there are other strategies as well. So we'll follow up on that. All right, and we will figure it out. Okay, so we are exactly on time with our agenda, and I believe next up we've got our presentation from our partners in electric, and welcome.
Hi, thank you. I got a clicker for you.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, I'm Mike McGlure. I'm the Vice President of Power Supply Planning. I was here last year. I think I was online 2 years ago, so I appreciate you inviting me back and taking an interest. Not too many councils actually invited us. So.
Oh, actually, it's very interesting.
Yeah.
Great presentation.
Yeah.
And it works out with Mary Ann's bringing her plaque today, because talking about all our clean resources you have there. Get right into it here. Just ready. Yeah, so, you know, we look at our power supply needs in two ways. You know, energy is, as we're used to, just meter spinning. And, you know, the village uses about 37 million kilowatt hours, or, you know, electricity is nice in the metric system, so 38,000, 37,000 megawatt hours. And you'll notice, you know, the winter and summer energy usage is about the same. When we look at our peak, though, you'll see that, you know, the summer hourly peak is a lot higher than the winter. Also, you notice the red lines here. You know, we've had a mild winter, January and February, and then April, May, and then June was the coolest June in 15 years with all the, you know, haze and everything. So you can see where the usage has been this year compared to the black was last year there. So we'll probably come in a little less than 37 million this year. On the peak side, yeah, is when we measure our, you know, 1 hour maximum usage for the village. You can see last year that was on July 20th at 6 o'clock in the afternoon or evening there. So that was 7.89 megawatts, or 78.9. So about 8,000 kW is the, you know, the peak it's been for the last few years there. And then, yeah, so this is what I was talking about. This is the hourly load of last year. I guess, yeah, if you look at a couple things to point out. So, you know, every hour we use about 3 megawatts. So, you know, the blue in the spring and the fall is usually when we bottom out there. But yeah, you'll see, you know, 8 megawatts spikes up in the summer when we hit those, you know, real hot days, and usually just, you know, a couple hours in the late afternoon there. And then in winter, you see, you know, when it gets cold, everybody's turning on gas furnaces, so we don't see that quite that spike. We had a little spike back in December 23rd, and we had that right before Christmas there. So, so when we talk about the market, you know, you'll notice when we get to your power supply, you're about 10% on the market, and you know, part of that is just when some of our resources are out of service, we have to buy to replace those, and the other part is just, you know, you can't really plan exactly the, you know, for a power supply to match each of those little spikes there, so that's, you know, the other part of the supply that comes from the market. And this is pretty interesting graph too. You know, so the red is the energy usage, and then the blue is the hourly peak for the last number of years. And you know, so red's, just like most of our members, been pretty steady. Made a little bit of recovery from COVID, where the little dip was, but really haven't seen a whole lot of load growth here recently. But then the good thing is, you know, the peak's been staying pretty steady. If you go all the way back to you know, almost 1999 or something, we hit 12 megawatts. If you guys were here back then, that's when that, you know, the village gets fed by a 12,000 volt or 12 kV line from Dayton Power and Light, and that was getting close to the the maximum capability of that line when we got to that 12 megawatts. So there was a lot of concern and a lot of, hand-wringing about how we were going to replace that. And so since then, we've had a, nice decrease in peak. And so, we don't have that concern at the moment there, and looks like we're in pretty good shape for a while there. So that'll save a lot of money down the road there. So we're going to go over the three parts of your bill, the energy supplies, and then we talk about, paying Dayton Power and Light for this transmission, and then that 12 kV line, and then the installed capacity paying for the backup generators on the system. So if you look at our resource, this is our, plan for this year. So, some of the pies, varied or not exact, as we have moving resources there. But you'll notice, and we'll go over these resources, but about 40% of it comes from hydropower, about 25% from landfill to landfill resources, 10% from wind, and then another 5% from the solar facility in the village there. And then we have about a little over 10% in plan. So as the load gets lower, that 10% of the market shrinks, and a lot of that market is when some of the generators, whether it's wind, solar, hydro or landfill, all of them have, they break periodically, or, we're out of water or something. So that's where that 10% fills in that gap there. So it's hard to, get to exactly to zero with the, moving resources and moving load there. So typically when we try to plan a resource, or a member's resource, we use about 10% on the market there. First we're going to talk about all the hydro projects. And so these are, we have basically two different types of supplies. The hydro projects are owned by AMP, and then the village and other members have, contracts that go out through the 2040s to cover that debt. And then the other power supplies are what we call power purchase agreements. So those are where somebody else owns those facilities, and AMP has a contract to buy the energy from those. So in this case, we have 5 hydro plants all on the Ohio River. The dams were there since the 60s, and then we went in and built the hydro plants next to those dams. So normally most of the water then flows through our plant. The gates on the dam are closed. So, ranges from Willow Island up the West Virginia-Ohio border all the way down to Smithland and Candleton. And so those 5 are broken down into 3 different projects. So the AMP Hydro project, if you go back real quick, that's Smithland, Candleton down at the bottom, and then Willow Island. Those 3 dams and hydro units make up 208 megawatt project. We call AMP Hydro phase 1. So of that 208, Yellow Springs owns 7, or AMP owns it, but Yellow Springs is contracted for 799 kW. As I mentioned, the debt on both AMP Hydro and Meldal goes through 2049, and then the Green Up Hydro goes through 2045. The nice thing about hydro plants is they don't have a whole lot of moving parts. So they expect to last, about 80 to 100 years. So, having that, 40-year debt didn't concern us too much. We tried to spread out because this is your most expensive resource there. You can see the rate's about $95 a megawatt hour. So Meldal is a single plant, single project. It's our biggest plant on the river. And then Green Up is a 70 megawatt project, also down in southern Ohio there. The NIPA is a good example of how long these hydro plants last. So NIPA, that's where AMP buys the power from the New York Power Authority, so they allocate some of their hydropower to the different states. And those were built back around 1960, so 60-some years old, and they're still running fine. So we get a share of that. Not a big share. Yellow Springs gets about 5% of their power from NIPA, and that's based on the number of residential customers throughout the municipals in the state there. And that's our cheapest resource because the debt's paid off, and that's about $25 a megawatt hour, which equates to 2.5 cents a kilowatt hour. Then we have a couple more power purchase agreements. The Brown County landfill is down in southern Ohio near Georgetown. So that's a 4 megawatt project that's owned by Energy Developments. We did a contract with them a few years ago. It goes out through 2032, and so that's about a little over 4 cents or $40 a megawatt hour. And both of those, a lot of these contracts, when we did them, it's not like you go to Costco and find all this green power out there. So, we do a lot of searching. We usually have, Yellow Springs like at, top of our list, like when we're looking for green power, we know you guys are interested. So you can see some of these smaller projects, we had, your name on them, one of the first customers there. Second landfill then is the Erie County landfill, and so that's a 2 megawatt project up in northern Ohio, and so Yellow Springs is contracted for 700 kW out of that 2,000 kW, and so this one, we had a longer term contract that ended at the middle of 2022, so we renewed it. Yellow Springs wasn't in the original contract, but in this case, then we put you guys down for 700 kW. Erie County, the landfill owners, they weren't sure, and the market was moving around, so we just did a 2-year deal right now, so this ends at the end of 2023. So we've been talking to them. Basically, we say, yeah, we want to buy from you, they want to sell to us, so we don't anticipate any problems. We just haven't signed a new contract. And the price should be around that $60 going forward. We're hoping to do maybe a 5-year contract. So so you'll probably hear from Josue, sometime in the second half of this year to approve a new contract with AMP to buy that power for a number of years out. Those landfills, they're still accepting trash, so they got about 15, 20 years left of methane gas coming out, so they don't expect to have to shut down too quickly there. Then last year, we had bought power out of the Blue Creek Wind Project up in northwest Ohio in Van Wert, and that contract expired in July of 2022. And I guess, at that time the market was pretty expensive. That's when the Russian-Ukraine war and all the natural gas and power price. So they didn't really want to do another contract with us, so we found a new supply of wind out in Pennsylvania, this Locust Ridge project. So we signed a 3-year deal with them. So that's a 100 megawatt project, and so Yellow Springs gets 1,600 kW of that at $47 a megawatt hour. So that'll be that's a 3-year deal. That one you guys signed last fall there. So it started in September. And then your solar project, nothing really new about that. One thing to point out about when we talk about transmission and capacity, so that's based on your meter at the time of Dayton's peak and then the PJM grid's peak. And so when the solar is producing during those hours, that reduces the incoming flow across that meter, and that reduces the amount of transmission and installed capacity that you pay. So not only you got energy out of that solar facility, but it also saved $25,000 in transmission and capacity costs there. And then the last supply is we have this JV2 project. So JV2 is a joint venture. So that project's actually not owned by AMP, it's owned by the members that participate in that project. And that's what we call a peaking project. So it's made up of a number of diesel and natural gas turbines. But the good thing, I guess, environmentally is we only run that about 40 hours a year. So basically they're inside other municipalities, just like your solar. When those transmission and capacity peaks come around, we run those units, and that reduces the meter and reduces our invoice. So if you look at JV2 with not having any debt anymore, it's paid off. The bottom there, the O&M was about $61,000 for Yellow Springs, and the savings was $113,000. So when you open up your power bill, you see a negative net line on that, so that's always nice there. So if you look at the energy supply for the next few years, you'll see the going forward, we got starting at the bottom, all the hydro projects, and then the solar is that red, and then next green checkered is the Brown County landfill out through 2032, and going up to the green, which is Erie County. So I sort of put that in there, just planning that we're going to get that. And then the next one is the Locust Ridge. So as I mentioned, we try to stay about 10%, give or take, as the load fluctuates and the supplies fluctuate. So we're good, for 24 and 25, other than signing that landfill contract. And then when we get to the end of 25, then we'll start looking for another green resource. And Sam's been, beating the bushes between solar, wind, and some more hydro. One of the challenges right now when we talk about the PJM grid is all these new projects want to get approval to connect to the grid. And there's so many asking for approval that PJM says our queue's like 2 or 3 years backlog. So, all the people that we talk to are like, well, we're still waiting for our interconnection approval until we can start building. So, it was 24, we're going to come online, now it's going to be 26. So there's a lot of projects on the books, but nothing, hitting the ground yet. So as we hear about those, then we'll be coming back to you with some recommendations there. So then the next thing is your delivery costs, which is the transmission and installed capacity costs. So I talk a lot about PJM, so PJM originally stood for Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, so they, banded together to operate the grid, and they expanded throughout Ohio and up into Chicago. So PJM sort of, tries to operate the grid most efficiently, starts the cheapest units first and works their way up, and they also, make sure the lights stay on, and also make sure, the power lines and generators aren't damaged or overloaded. So that's their three main jobs. And then Yellow Springs then resides in the Dayton Power and Light transmission zone. So even though we use all the lines of PJM, our transmission costs are based on what the cost of the DP&L transmission zone there. And luckily, Dayton Power and Light's one of the lower cost transmission grids in PJM, since they're a relatively small system there. But you can see, we're still seeing some increases in cost each year, as they build more. And we'll talk about your rates. You have a power cost adjustment. Dayton has a similar thing on their transmission rate. So as they spend more money, they have an automatic adjuster that allows them to collect that through their transmission rates. And then on top of that, you pay a rate for that 12 kV line coming to the system. That's a separate charge. That's a fixed rate of just $1.32 per kilowatt per month. So as you put the transmission and distribution together, you can see it's about $3.80, close to $4 a kW per month. And then that's where the kW, then that's when we talk about the Dayton Power and Light's peak hour. And so the amount of transmission you pay based on that rate is your load at the time of Dayton Power and Light's peak. So we call that the coincident peak, so when everybody's peaking together. And so when AMP sends out an alerts to the village, and you guys put your social media message out to customers, if you can curtail your load during these, afternoon hours, it's going to save the village money. So what this is doing is lowering the village load at the time of Dayton Power and Light's peak, and that reduces our transmission and distribution bill for the upcoming year there. So last year, so 2023, if you look at the bottom, Dayton's peak was on June 15th at 5 o'clock, so the village load was 7.476. So that's, so that was about 7% lower than your peak of, almost 8 megawatts. So that's the amount of transmission that we pay for there. And then the second bullet there, so the solar was putting out about a half megawatt at that time. So we actually got billed for 6.9 megawatts of transmission then. And so when we talk about our power, your retail rate being a little over 15 cents, so transmission and distribution is about a half a cent of that. And then the second thing, your delivery charge is installed capacity. So as I mentioned, PJM's responsible for keeping the lights on. So, so they run an auction. They say, all the generators, all your curtailable loads, what do you want to get paid to be, on call during an emergency? So when we need you to keep the lights on, you got to operate. We're going to pay you a check. And so that the transmission always goes up as they spend more money, but installed capacity goes up and down, based on supply and demand. So if, they think the load's going to be lower or there's more generators being built, then, rates go down. So you can see, we were hovering around that $4 or $5 range for a while, but then the last 3 years, we're at $1.52. We're $1.04 per kW per month right now, and then next year it'll go down to 88 cents a kW month. So we've had a number of, for a while it was natural gas units. Now it's a lot of solar units coming on to add to that installed capacity value there. So, but, as low prices, the cure for low prices is low prices. So, as generators get paid less, then they're more likely to retire. So, PJM's sort of predicting a shortage as we go out further in the decade. So, we might see those prices start going up again. So once that installed capacity rate is set, it goes from June through May. So right now we're at that $1.04 per kW per month. So just like similar to transmission, it's based on a coincident peak. In this case, it's based on the entire PJM system's 5 highest peaks. So we just flipped over to June 2023. So now we're looking back at the 5 peaks in 2022, which are 3 on July 21st and 22nd, and then August 3rd and 8th. So once again, those peaks are always usually around 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon there. So Yellow Springs average was 7.4 megawatts, so that's your contribution to the backup. And so since that installed capacity rate has gone down, the capacity cost has gone down, so you're only adding about 0.3 cents of your residence cost for installed capacity backup. So we put all that together, this is your total power cost. So blue is, your energy supply. And then black and white is the distribution and transmission cost. And then gray is installed capacity. So you see in 23 and 24, that gray bar gets pretty small there. And then the white and black, depends on, your 1 CP, your load at the time of Dayton's peak there. So then we have to try to forecast that out. But the good thing you'll see here is that price is going to hover right around 9 cents for a while there. So we're not expecting, much of an increase. And I guess at the same time, we're not expecting really a decrease either, since most of our contracts are fixed price there. So then that 9 cents then translated, into your retail rate that your residents pay. And right now, the Yellow Springs, an average customer using 1,000 kilowatts hours per month is going to pay about 15 cents a kilowatt hour, which has stayed pretty steady. But Dayton's rate, if you remember, last June was the big news that they went from around 10 cents to 16 cents. This year, they stayed about 16 cents, so no change, they stayed out of the news, I guess, but their price didn't go back down. So you guys are about 1 cent cheaper. And one of the reasons that Dayton took that big increase is they sold all their generation basically, and so they have to buy 100% of their power from the market. And so they have periodic times when they go out and buy about a third of their sign a contract for about a third of their supply. And so when they were doing that the last 2 years, the market has taken a big jump, and so they were forced to buy that extra expensive power, and their distribution costs have gone up as well. So if you look at just a little education for how the Yellow Springs rates are set, so you have a customer charge, so everybody pays $15 a month, regardless of usage. Then you have a base rate of 11 cents, and that's basically 7 cents of that is your power supply cost, and then 4 cents runs the electric system. And so then at the bottom, then we have a power cost adjustment. So, so if power costs go up, we don't want to take all the money from the electric fund and, deplete that. So the power cost adjustment floats. So we have a 3-month average of your power cost. So if your power cost stays around 9 cents, you subtract that 7.2 cents, and you add, you sell about 10% less than what you buy. For losses through the system there. So your power cost adjustment, your PCA is about 2 cents. So, and then we have the kilowatt hour tax that all Ohio customers pay for Yellow Springs and all the municipal electric systems. That stays with the city or the village. So overall, you put all that together, and that's where the 15 cents a kilowatt hour rate. So if power costs stay around 9 cents, then the customer will stay at that 15 cent range for long term here. And just one other note there, AEP, their costs actually went up to 20 cents this year, and First Energy too, if you can go over to South Vienna and stuff, so Springfield. So costs are definitely going up throughout the system there. So if you can stay at 15 cents, that'll be on the low side of most utilities in the state. So that's really all I had. I beat my time by a few minutes there.
Thank you, Mike.
Okay, I just put a couple extra slides just in case you guys were wondering. Yeah, all the electric vehicles in Yellow Springs there. Everybody always is wondering. You guys have a pretty extensive list for a small town, compared to a lot of our other towns have 4 or 5 there.
That's good.
Yeah.
Questions for Mike?
A lot of good stuff.
Thank you.
Thanks for making it plainer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate.
Keep inviting me back, it'll make sense when you take it.
I appreciate the breakdown. There are 2 things that we don't necessarily need to get into tonight, but I've read some about local grid activities. Do we have any AMP members that are doing anything like that?
Not necessarily. I guess I call it a microgrid.
Yep.
So if the entire system goes down, you can have a smaller portion of your microgrid that stay online. Not necessarily planning a microgrid, but we have some towns that we talked about the JV2 project where they have some diesel units or gas turbines, and some solar that technically became a microgrid before the word was popular. So like Edgerton up in northwest Ohio, last year a thunderstorm came through, knocked down a transmission line over the railroad, and the railroad came through and took down like 10 lines,
Oh, wow.
10 poles, And so they were going to be out like a week, and so they were able to get those units back up and actually, get back online within a day. So, where, a lot of towns that are bigger, they haven't got enough generation in town to actually be a microgrid there. So it's sort of by default, some of the little towns are microgrids, but nobody's really made a full step to become a microgrid there yet.
Okay. The other thing is initial thoughts. So 95% green portfolio is amazing. We have an ultimate goal to be 100%. What do you think is our best bet?
So as I mentioned, the big one we've been working on for a while is a solar project up in Van Wert, where the Blue Creek one used to be. And I didn't put because they're stuck waiting for PJM to give it approval. Mm-hmm. So we're hoping by 2026, that if that does come online, that'll be another resource, and that should get you up to that 100%. All right. As well as, if we can find some other wind, landfill, hydro, we'll keep plugging your name in there and getting to that 100% there.
Good. We appreciate it. Any other questions?
I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for your time, Mike.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, see you later.
See ya.
Oh, you came along today.
Thank you.
That's right. Got to experience a Yellow Springs Council meeting. All right.
Well, glad.
Thank you.
Tell all your friends. It was interesting.
So I believe we're at the manager's reports.
We are. All right, thank you. I've got a couple things to point out. We're still working on the J&T excavation project. Attorneys are starting to go back and forth, so hopefully we'll get through that quickly. I did follow up on the Vernay remediation project. I spoke with the chief of the division, who so happened that he left to another division in May. So they're in transition, and he's going to facilitate communications with the incoming chief division. So hope to get a more formal update in the coming weeks. Mitzi,
At the last Partners for the Environment meeting, the city of Troy was presenting, and they have 2 Superfund sites in the city that are within their source water protection area.
oh my God, yeah.
And it took about 18 years for the EPA to finally get to the place where they signed off on these things, but they have. But, so that sort of puts in perspective, because Vernay is out of our source water protection, and it's not really a Superfund site. So.
Right. And maybe to add to that, there was a remediation plan that was supposed to work. It didn't work as it was initially planned. The pump and treat system didn't work as effective as it was intended to, and we've had 20 years of that. And 20 years later, we're now in another remediation plan process. So putting that in perspective, but obviously it's dragged on much longer than any of us up here would want. So we're actively working on that. Mike left. We wanted to talk about RECs, because we've been going back and forth on RECs. Energy prices or market prices for RECs have gone up, so I put that in my manager's report. We're looking at a significant opportunity there to have an infusion of cash to fund capital improvements and do some of the carbon reduction projects. So we're going to look at solar projects, rooftop solar projects that we can get underway. So that's in my report. There's a report about Forever Chemicals in there. I've also included a link to the proposed threshold adjustments by the EPA. There's no final ruling on that. That's still working its way through public comments and agency comments. So I will report back to council when a decision is made on Forever Chemicals and what our action plan would be should we need to adjust our filtration systems. So that's in there. Mitzi Miller's gone. I wanted to thank her for her list of complaints. There are complaints. You know, we treat these as complaints. We are complaint-driven enforcement, so we're going to follow up on all these. But I bring this up because we're also going to start our final phase of the sidewalk repair projects. As you may recall, 2018, we had a big study done on our sidewalks, what needed to be ground down and what needed to be replaced. We're now at the last phase, we're replacing sidewalks. So that work starts next week. I've included a list of those sidewalks to be repaired in the manager's report. And I will entertain any questions you may have.
On the recs, what's going to be the next step to go ahead and move forward? If you
The next step, Mike and I went back and forth last week about finding the source type. So he's going to match up greenie recs that are going to replace the recs that we saw. From the presentation, you see that some are gas-filled recs, others are solar, and so we want to make sure that we replace source type in year so that we maintain the same number of recs. So I hope to get that squared away by the end of the week, and we can move forward with that opportunity.
And with respect to the forever chemicals, I mean, I'm sure there's a range of things we would be required to do, either, changing filtration systems or something. How close are we prepared to deal with that spectrum of potential issues?
The recommended technology is that granular filtration technology we don't have in our current processes, so we will have to get that engineered and see how we can include it in our sand filtration process. So we have a sand filtration process, we would need to add this additional filtration mechanism.
Okay.
So we're not there yet, we will need to speak with engineers. The first step will be that we would need to evaluate and test all of our wells, which we're currently underway of putting a plan for that.
Okay. Good.
And I will say to that point, Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission has been talking about this, because, a lot of these forever chemicals are coming from Right Pad and, then leaking into other systems. So I believe that, not only are they gathering expertise, but will also be able to help support us, the municipalities, as we move forward. So,
Good. Great.
And another activity going on in this space is the EPA requiring manufacturers to disclose who has forever chemicals in their products, because there are many products that we don't know if they have forever chemicals in them. So, and they're labeled forever chemicals because they don't degrade over time. So once you do catch them, then you have to put them somewhere.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Other thing I forgot, if we're on this topic, we're also going to start repairing many of the alleys. I've included a list of them, such as the alley behind the library. If you've driven through the library parking lot, we sealed and restriped the parking lot at the library. Now we're going to asphalt the alley behind the library, and there are a few other alleys we'll do in the village.
Okay. Good to know.
Gavin?
The alley reminds me, I had a citizen ask me about like a light that was bright, that was like a, it's like a, who should I direct them to talk to? Like, where, is it?
Yeah, you just send it to me and I get it to the right team, usually with Johnny, Ben, and Tanner go out and inspect the light radius. If it's a light shining into a window,
Yeah.
we check the radius and brightness, and we have been known to adjust lights for residents upon residents' request.
Okay. Anything else? I wanted to mention that Kevin and I had our first check-in with Josue, and remember we talked about that we'll be having different council members do that monthly. I did look, we finalized the goals at the end of April, so, we were supposed to be on it, sooner, but it was a really good check-in, and one of the things that we talked about was making space for different departments to report out, talk more in depth about things. I mean, for example, I appreciated a lot in the manager's report, all kinds of things that I'd be interested in talking more about. So that is something that we're going to be working on in agenda planning to meet that request and hear from the boots on the ground. I will say one thing that I didn't understand was the chart with wastewater treatment, how that number was almost half of the prior number. I mean, I know that rainfall has something to do with that, but it seemed odd. And, I mean, we don't have to go in depth, but that stood out to me, and I didn't know, did something really good happen or not, or,
Do you want me to jump in now? I can briefly, if you look at the rainfall difference from April to May, in April we had 3.7 inches of rain. In May we had 1.93 inches of rain. We did have about half less wastewater that we processed, and a lot of that is just, it's simply the reduction of stormwater getting in our sanitary system. There are things that happen throughout the seasons, or we're doing leak detection in our water lines. Last year we were able to reduce the infiltration and inflow in our storm system because we were able to locate a huge water leak that's happening next to our storm system, and we didn't see water running on the streets because it was leaving the water pipe and going straight into the storm sanitary pipe. So there are those things that change the flow. Other things that change the flow is over what period of time the rain falls. So if it rains all at once, then we're more likely to see infiltration and inflow because water levels rise above the maintenance holes or other points of entry for water versus slow rainfalls over an extended period of time. But I can have Brad come out and we can talk about those. I also our team has extended invitations to all council members to do site visits. So I will invite you, consider this a personal invitation that you're invited anytime to come to our wastewater treatment facility or water plant or any other operation that we have so you can see the team at work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on the manager's report? Okay, then we've got one old business item. And actually, I think I'll just kind of recap that this came out of our last council retreat. And we talked about this with the Development Corp. Talked about it a little bit at the last meeting, but we want to formalize, number one, our priorities for the rest of the year, which are at the top of the memo. So infrastructure and being really intentional about not only dealing with all of the deferred maintenance, but also matching that with the goals that we want to see around housing development, which is another of those priorities, economic development. I mean, the only way that we're going to be able to grow is if we have solid infrastructure, and then we've got the expansion of municipal broadband. So I think that's sort of the first thing that we wanted to formalize. The second thing was talking about that process for how we bring projects forward. And Judy, I think, did a really nice job of articulating how we kind of do our due diligence up front to make sure that it's a project that makes sense and we should spend time on. And then, of course, there are follow-up things that happen with that. And so I think that's something that I don't know if we need to discuss anymore because we discussed it at the retreat and otherwise, but I think, so any questions or comments?
No, I think to your comments, Brian, about Judy doing a first go-around at this, I think it's great. It's a process, it's a structure, it's a step forward. I think the next thing to do is when someone has an idea or a proposal, stick it in, apply the methodology and see what comes out.
Right. And we already heard something come up today from Mary Ann related to that and how we handle traffic on Fairfield and potentially other places. I mean, that's a great example of working through the process. Were you thinking about something, Mary Ann?
Is it?
Well,
I mean, are you saying like that I should come up with a plan to bring to
yeah, it's
council,
not,
or
remember, this isn't just for council. This is for commissions, this is for staff.
staff should, I mean, 'cause I don't think.
Right, so that's what I meant, is that this will be a good process that
There you
staff.
go.
Yes, yes.
I got it.
I think it was clear, I think it was clear
Except
that.
I was the only one council person. I don't know, I mean, I don't, do other council people agree that we want staff?
Well, that's, the process is supposed to be, we have that, kind of upfront work, and then we make that decision, so.
Well, does the rest of council want staff to even do anything?
For me, it's a staff thing. It's a personal safe. It's a safety thing. It's a staff thing. I mean, we can talk about it and we can move on certain things and we can get a lot of community input. But the bottom line is that we're not the ones who are going out there, putting signs up or doing the physical work. So it's a staff. It has to move on that. So it has to move that way.
Yes.
Yes.
What I'm
My answer to your question
asking
is yes.
is, either we can do what we have been doing, which is the police go out however much they do to catch people, sit there. We have Joe Ayers putting his little thing up. That's what we're doing as far as I know. I'm asking staff to do something more than that, to come up. And so I'm asking council, do we want them to, if I'm the only council person that wants.
You're not.
You're not, we're all in agreement.
All right.
Except I think it does cross into policy when we talk about, are we going to use speed humps? Are we going to do red light cameras, which, I support personally. But, so again, that's where I think we have to weigh in.
You have to think about the expense of red light cameras are expensive,
Right.
and it's a third-party thing. There are a lot of variables.
Well, that's why we'd have to have a proposal
Sure.
on here the options.
Okay.
Right, before we make any
So I
decisions.
think
All right,
this should
good.
go through the
Let's do it.
process, and those things will be laid out as potential approaches.
Okay.
Okay. So I think we should formalize this. So I'm going to make a motion that we adopt these 2023 priorities and this process to move initiatives forward.
I second the motion.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and I think we're on to new business, and I know we've got Mayor Cody and Chief Noah here. Thank you guys for coming. And Josue, do you want to say something?
Sure, I'll kick it off. The partnership has been hard at work on outlining the MOU and the service, the partnership that we're looking to set up here to serve what we estimate about 15,000 residents through dispatch services. We had hoped better collaboration from the county and better services, but we are where we are, and we are trying to do the best for our residents as a community. So I'm honored to be working with both Cedarville and Jamestown, and also joining the mix of Cedarville University to find effective solutions that improve quality of service for residents while also maintaining costs and managing cost. So you should have received an email from Amy earlier today about the outlines of the MOU that's moving forward. And joining us tonight is Mayor Cody, John Cody Jr., and Chief Noah, representing Jamestown and Cedarville, who have gone through a similar process as you have of discussing the project, looking at the advantages and how we can work a joint venture on this. Mayor and Chief, if you want to share any thoughts?
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting us to come. Honestly, it's been a pleasure working with Brian and Josue and Paige over the last month or so on this project. Obviously, this came about because the county dumped a new bill on us that really wasn't anything that we could, afford. And so we looked at other opportunities and started working with Paige and Josue, and through some meetings, I think we have a real way forward. At our last meeting in Cedarville, the council was unanimous in support of it, so we are ready and willing to move forward on that. So yeah, I don't have a lot to say, but I'm just very encouraged by this. This has been a very open process to be able to work with you guys on this. That's not always the way with the county sometimes, but it's been a refreshing, it's nice to group together as, small communities here in eastern Greene County, but But yeah, anyway, I really appreciate it, and like I said, the village of Cedarville is very supportive and moving forward on it. So, do you have any questions for me, or? Okay.
Well, we just thank you for coming. Appreciate the words of encouragement.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And, yeah, Chief?
Mayor Bradley wanted me to read this letter to you guys. He apologizes that he couldn't make it here in person today. Village Council and Village Manager, I sincerely apologize for being unable to attend tonight's meeting in person. Our council meeting is held at the same time as yours, and we are 2 members short tonight, so my presence is required for decorum. I want to express my deepest gratitude for the hard work and support that the Village of Jamestown has received from Chief Burge, Mr. Salmeron, and Mr. Hausch as we worked through the conversations surrounding our dispatch partnership. I want to express my sincere appreciation to all of you for this consideration. My #1 priority as the mayor of Jamestown is the safety and security of our residents. This partnership will allow this priority to be met in a much more fiscally responsible manner that not only benefits the residents of Jamestown, but also the residents of all of our communities. Our villages are an important part of Greene County, and our partnership will help us all on a much broader scale as we are stronger together than we are individually. I look forward to continuing this process to hopefully get to say thank you in person again soon, and I'm very thankful not only for myself and my family, but for all the residents of Jamestown. Thank you all for this opportunity to better serve our communities. Sincerest thanks and appreciation, Joshua Bradley, Mayor of the Village of Jamestown. So, and I will say, for Chief Burge, she has been very accommodating to me. I just started last week, so obviously coming in with this and trying to get on board and getting this kind of dumped in my lap down there, she has been very accommodating, and it's much appreciated, the extra mile that she's willing to go to get me brought up to speed. So.
Thanks for coming. We appreciate that.
Thanks, Chief, and thanks to Mayor Bradley.
Awesome. Jeez.
So yeah, I will just underscore, the meetings have been great. I really have appreciated the collaboration and the similar sort of goals to serve our citizens. I think you guys know that councils express support across the board, and I don't know if anyone wants to say anything else. Yeah, Marianne?
I think it's great that our villages can work together. I think we understand what our communities need in a way that the county doesn't. Maybe they just have a different thing there. But I think this can benefit us beyond this particular project in order to have more collaboration among our communities.
Right.
I wouldn't submit that the county has any intention to overlook us. They've got some big fish to fry, and a lot of their effort and money is directed to sometimes to the larger communities, and I think we are being presented, with a situation where it's almost a lack of equity in terms of what we're being presented with. I mean, I think it's fair for everyone to do their fair share, but it just seemed that things were getting a little bit out of balance. But when we can come together and form, as Josue alluded to, a larger community, then we will become a force to be reckoned with, and we look forward to the partnership.
All right. Anything else?
Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's nice for our citizens to hear from you as well. Jessica?
Yeah, I do have a couple of questions. So, Josue, we talked about this briefly, but I did have a chance to speak to Brandon Huddleston with the county, and he questioned the feasibility of adding a primary PSAP to the county. And in my kind of conversation with you, Josue, you alluded to some sort of penalty, it's 15% for 911 calls. Can you just speak to those two things a little bit?
Sure. I'll speak to the being able to certify to receive our own 911 calls. That process is well-defined, and Paige, who's on Zoom, and Paige, let me know if you want to weigh in or if I miss anything. There's a defined process to follow to become certified to receive our own 911 calls. Having the dashboard technology, which we're working on as part of this joint venture or partnership, getting the 911 trunk system through our phone provider. We're already in touch with the phone provider to be able to have those designated 911 trunks. The issue that county administrator is referencing is our ability to collect fees. Right now, the county collects all the 911 fees for the entire county and divide those fees to a negotiated agreement that the large municipalities came up with. So there's 3 of them that signed this master agreement on how the 911 fees would get distributed. The process for us to get 911 fees, we have to have a seat at the table and be able to sign one of those agreement with them to get our own fees, and will be the fees for the partnerships. There's a law that was passed in 2018 to incentivize the counties and the different access points to consolidate their efforts and just merge the different dispatch centers. And the penalty there was, the incentive was that if there were more than 3 PSAPs, that there would be a 15% penalty reduction in the 911 fees distributed until they were able to get to 3 PSAPs or less. So anyone who had more than 3 would take a 15% hit. So I interpreted that law that we would not be restricted from having our own PSAP, since that is a defined process on how we become certified to get our own to become certified and receive our own 911 calls. What will be in dispute would be, do we have access to our own 911 fees? I understood it as we would be, and there will be 2 mechanisms to work through. One will be with that master agreement that the PSAPs have signed, that the county has led. I hope that the county administrator will be more collaborative once we've met the certifications to receive our own 911 calls. And we'll work out the remaining issues down the road. One of the things that the partnership has been strongly emphasizing is that individually, small communities, we don't have as much influence, but collectively we'll be representing 3 communities, 15,000 residents. It changes the dynamics going in with partners versus going at it on our own.
So if we were to become a primary PSAP, how many would that make in the county?
That would mean it'll be, Paige, I don't know if this is where you want to weigh in. The FCC has a different registration list than the state does. So if you were to look at the FCC registrations, we would be the 3rd PSAP. At the state level, recognizes 3, which would be Fairborn, Beaver Creek, and the county. Which county is actually Xenia. It's not the counties, it's Xenia City's dispatch service that is contracted with the county. I'm sorry? Sure. Oh, sure, yes. Hey, Paige, are you able to hear us?
Hey, are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So what I want to emphasize is not so much a focus on the fees that we would receive. While that would be an end goal or a big picture goal in the long run, I want to put emphasis on the fact that first and foremost, we're trying to be good neighbors, good partners, and facilitate this small community dispatch center for the better of all of our communities right now. In the future, that primary certification that we're going to be seeking is, yes, at the end of it all, we do want to receive those fees. However, in the short term, we will immediately have a savings of between all 3 communities, $45,000 plus, and that's just in the 911 transfer fees alone. So if we never saw a single 911 fee, we're still going to be seeing a significant reduction in the cost of our dispatch center just by becoming a primary PSAP. So, but everything else is very good, and if they're still in the room, thank you both to Jamestown and Cedarville Chief. Now I appreciate you guys showing up tonight.
Thanks, Chief.
Yeah. And just a follow-up question, you said that the FCC recognizes two PSAP, primary PSAPs in the county?
Yes, Paige, do you want to refresh my memory
Yeah,
on
can
that?
you talk about the difference between the FCC and the state recognition?
Sure, so currently you'll find on the FCC registry, you'll actually find 5 public safety answering points. Trying to get away from using acronyms, I found out today that not everyone always knows what we're talking about. So they currently recognize 5. So you'll actually see Xenia Green, which is the biggest, Fair One, Beaver Creek, Right Pat, and then a recently enacted one, which is going to be Bellbrook. So those are all considered registered PSAPs. Now, only 3 of those receive funding to the best of our knowledge. And I think Josue and I even discussed possibly it's just Green Xenia, but I'm not sure about that. So there are 5. So there's no limitation on who can be a public safety answering point. That's not an issue. The limitation is on the funding. That's not even in the picture for this first year of this project. Again, the short-term goal right now is to execute on being able to handle the dispatch services for these small communities, and then we'll progress through the project from there. So that's phase 2. Phase 3 would be the PSAP certification.
Thank you, Chief. So I apologize, that's it too. It's 5 that are under the FCC registration, the federal registration.
Okay. Well, I just want to emphasize, I really appreciate that Chief Burge highlighted the, even without getting the fees, like what this means, and reminders of things like, currently, or at least in a couple years, it's going to cost us $17 and some change for them to hit a button to transfer a 911 call. I mean, that to me just highlights that, at a minimum, we've got to be in a better position, which I think is both what Chief and Josue talked about, and whether that means we ultimately get 911 fees or whether it means that we, get charged a better rate for transferring those calls. I believe that that's the kind of stuff that we're looking at in the future. So, Marianne, were you going to say something else?
No.
Okay, good. All right, well, great discussion. Thank you all, and thanks for coming to Yellow Springs.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks. Yay.
All right.
Yay us.
Partnership.
And maybe before you go, we have a new administrator in Cedarville, Miss Kennedy. So good interim. I'm sorry. Okay. Interim administrator.
Great.
Welcome.
Welcome to the team. Great.
All right. Well, you guys don't need to stick around, of course. Thank you. So I know we have one more piece of new business, which is re-upping Alex Klug.
Yes.
Marianne?
Yes. So Alex Klug was a member of the Environmental Commission. She stepped down because of a conflict of interest when we were working on the CAS program. And she was at Agraria, and she was going to be working with that program. But she's no longer working at Agraria. She's with the Hall Hunger Initiative and living in town and would like to rejoin. So I think probably everyone knows Alex and her credentials that follow her, and so Carmen and I would like to, I'm going to move that we nominate her.
And I'm going to second.
Great. And all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right. Glad to have Alex back in the mix.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that then puts us into future agenda items. So.
I got a little sideways on the rent. Did you want something to come back soon, like, that contemplates a longer term, or did you just want to
I think it would be. I think it would be good for us to see the updated lease. I have that in the packet, but I think otherwise, I think we. Yeah, I think. So the question you're asking is whether we want to talk about the permanent escalator. Is that what you mean?
Right, I got a little lost in that discussion as to whether that was something you wanted to see coming back or whether you were good with, well, let's give it a couple of years and then.
I think we're sticking with the 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, making the month changes, September. Making the changes in the utilities. And then goes forward as is, and if we want to make some changes in the near term, we do. If not, we'll see it again in 2 years.
Okay.
So the escalator updated and reflected in the lease, right?
Well, I think we need to see the lease.
Right.
It's going to be there, yeah.
Yes, Carmen, to your question, yes, the escalator will be listed for the 2 years.
Okay, gotcha.
So
Okay, cool.
we'll make that abundantly clear.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
And I 17 back in, I'm sorry, 27 back in for a second read.
Yep. So it is possible that at this July 17th meeting, if it's not a heavy agenda, that Josue suggested an overview from Public Works and putting some time on that. So let's put it down, Judy, for now, and then make sure we can accommodate that. I guess one of the things, not that we're at August 20th yet, but we do need to be mindful, since we don't have that first meeting in August, that a lot of things could pop up for that agenda.
And there's not anything that we could do now that would pop up then?
Is that an invitation to?
I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, but I guess I'm looking at this thinking, it seems like it's a really light agenda right now.
Right. Yeah, I think we could check in with Amy Kay to see if the budget process check-in would be ready for the 17th.
So just while you're looking at that, can I ask just sort of a process question? So right now, if we get like say we leave this meeting and there's not too many things on the agenda, and then we get an agenda draft from Judy, is it, I'm sorry if this is a stupid question, but is it like then appropriate for us to, like, if we look at it and we go, oh, this seems like it's going to be a pretty light meeting, then to respond with, well, here's another topic that maybe we add? Is that how it works?
Sure. And, I mean, even better if you have one in mind that, prior to agenda planning, so.
Great, okay. I think, so just, here's the way my brain's working on this, is like, we have these priorities, and so I like the idea of the, hearing from Public Works. It feels like it falls into relevant around infrastructure improvements. So I'm sort of looking at these pieces going, okay, it feels like economic development, we're kind of, seems like with the joint meeting with YSDC, we've got a plan there. I know there are some of these sort of bigger picture topics that I guess, like you mentioned just a little bit ago, Brian, something around growth and sort of, if we want to grow, and I still am not clear that we do and that how we want to, and so I could imagine there being conversation there. So anyway, if the idea here is I don't have a perfectly planned agenda item, but that's a topic that I would be interested in talking about that I think is relevant to these other pieces. I also feel like we talked about the YSDC joint meeting, and I think it kind of came up here a little bit tonight in a couple of contexts from citizen comments, is wondering whether or not we should invest in community engagement in some way. Josue, I'm thinking about your goals that you presented at the beginning of the year. It was a topic, I think. Anyway, it's a thing that has kind of been on my mind. It's come up in a couple different settings. I'm not sure where we put it. So I'm not suggesting these go on next meeting's agenda. I'm just telling you here are some things that I'm wondering about since you asked.
Yep.
There was one item that we weren't back and forth that relates to what you're asking. Dean O'Brien, myself, started a new email chain about a pitch deck, something to say. There's the dating profile that the YSDC put together. Not dating profile is not the right terminology, but what do we have to offer as a community? And so we had talked about putting together a presentation of what is Yellow Springs, what does open for business mean for us. So I don't know, Brian, the 17th, we had thought about doing it in August. So if that's something Gavin, that you would be interested, and I suppose we could look into having that come at the 17th meeting, at least an outline.
Possibly.
So would it be based off of what the YSDC has already written?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, and what was discussed at the last
Okay.
meeting.
Yeah, I think if we have time to get that outline together, because we definitely want to share that with everyone.
Yeah.
And the YSDC.
Yeah, and I just want to be mindful of, you're taking some time off, and,
Yeah.
you know, so it is the summer. Yeah. Okay, anything else? All right, well, then I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, thanks, everyone.
10 seconds.
And-
Like by 10 seconds.
Yes, happy 4th of July. Enjoy tomorrow's day off.